G'day and welcome again to another Campfire Project panel discussion. And today I have with me, first of all, Heather Joy Bassett, who is a transformational sprucer. How are you, Heather?
Yeah, very well. Great to be here.
It's lovely to have you. We've had quite a few conversations and they've been a lot of fun, so I'm looking forward to today as well. And then we have Helen Glover, who is the founder and CEO of The Gentleman's Secret. Welcome to the Campfire, Helen.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, Alan.
It's been a while since we last spoke, so it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
And then we have Pauline Crawford-Omps, who is the CEO of Corporate Heart International. How are you, Pauline?
I'm absolutely amazingly, fantastically excited to be here. And magical.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. Today we've been talking about the subject for today, and we're thinking about how do we develop the highest level of synergy between men and women to co-lead businesses today, and how to pinpoint the heart centre of our lives and work, and how does this impact on our society and economy. Now, Pauline, your passion is with men and women to be truly authentic, how they can be successful, whether they are at home, at work, as business owners or employed. So would you like to kick us off on this subject?
I would love to. One of the things I'm focused on since getting into 2020 is real synergy. And what I mean by real is authentic. So real life, real issues. And although my focus is centered on how do men and women run businesses, it obviously impacts life. But what I'm kind of still amazed about in the world is that we have empowerment of women, we have empowerment of men, Campfire project, everything is fantastic. But we still know the numbers are blocked in a lot of corporate environments. And there was an article the other day that in America, because I happen to be here now, there's 109,000 more women than men who have jobs in America, but they're not at the top of organizations. So I'm looking at how can we influence business, not by numbers and mandates and quotas, but by changing the humanization of business to understand that when men and women come together, hopefully they have a sense of almost parenting, and I mean that in an adult sense, but bringing the fusion of and the synergy of masculine feminine energy, so that when we know there's a movement towards this, there's a lot of talk and writing about humanizing, but when I look at the numbers, I still see, it's stuck. If 75% of the workforce is female, but all the top is men, what are the directives coming down that influence the lives of those people within the organization? So that's what I'm passionate about, is in a way, what's the role of women and what's the role of men in defusing that particular blockage? Your thoughts on that?
Well, ladies, Helen or Heather, what would you say about that?
I think it's such a huge topic. It's an enormous topic, and it comes from years and years of the history of masculine feminine interchange, and that we had such completely defined roles for centuries, and where the people who have fabulously redefined roles in a way, but with it we've also got all of the old woundings that we've still brought with us, and that causes us to almost, I feel, we're defending each other against each other. So females are defending being female and men are defending being male, and I see that playing out all the time, and that is one of the things that I feel we need to stop doing. That if we can just stop defending our gender and show up as people and be seen with the skills and the benefits of what that brings, we can actually recognize each other. And it's not just a gender thing, it's a people thing. You see men going up against men and women going up against women. It's that kind of competitiveness that comes from an insecurity that personally we're not good enough. So I think underneath there's that kind of psychology of, are we making people feel valued so that they feel comfortable enough that they can let somebody else come through who is just as good, if not better than them, so that they can relax into either learning or being with that human rather than defending or being nervous. They're going to be intimidated. So yeah, I think there's a lot of that going on underneath all of this.
Yes. I would agree with you, Helen, and I'll be really interested to know what Heather's going to say. But I think, you know, we're ready to come together, but there's still a language problem, a translation problem sometimes at a human level about what it is we really want at work and at home. Yeah.
That's it. You know, with the, as you mentioned there before about parenting, but also when we look at staff and everything else, or as a parent, we want our children to be the best version they can be. So in doing that, why don't we do that with each other? Because that way we benefit from that, because if our kids are the best version they can be, and as parents, we benefit from that. So why can't we benefit from other people being the best versions of themselves as well? And not feeling in a competition. And at the same time, people who are different, we should be embracing, because that's how we make teams. We don't make them from the same as us. Heather, what were your thoughts on this?
Yeah. One of the things that come up for me is if we're looking at masculine and feminine energies, then that's not necessarily man and woman. So the depth of the conversation around that, because in my business I was in the masculine a lot of the time. So the depth of awareness that we can go to around gender issues and around masculine and feminine, around the being, the doing, the creating, the processes. I really like using profile systems, and I totally agree we need man and woman there, but we can't then think, well, because there's a man that's in the masculine energy, because there's a woman, the woman is in the feminine energy, because that doesn't work. You know, so there's sort of two separate things. And then to be able to communicate and understand, I love profiles. So Alan's a profiler. So one of the things, if we can understand in business, then when we're building teams, then we need to understand the other person from their perspective and their experience, but also their expertise. And so a lot of people who are the people person aren't the process person. So, you know, there are people who are designed to do processes, and there are people who are designed to be the heartbeat. And then it's understanding that without that, we don't have that. And without that, we don't have that. So that recognition of needing everyone in there, everyone in the team, and that synergy of when we understand where the other person's coming from, that's really powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. If I could come in, one of the things that I was studying, Heather and Helen, and Alan knows some of this, is I wanted to understand the mix of male, female, masculine and feminine, because as you say, Heather, some of us have a masculine energy. I've got a very masculine energy in my femaleness, as you have, and Alan's actually got some gentleness in his maleness. So what I designed was a map which is 360 degrees, and it actually embraces everybody, because that's what it does. So it says everybody is in there, and it layers in some profiling, which adds to other profiling, as Alan does, and strengths profiling, Myers-Briggs, all of the stuff. But what I would love to see happen is that when we walk into a room, especially in a very business environment, which is more control-centered, maybe in a traditional way, is that we understand everybody in the room and where they're coming from a different, lots of different men, lots of different women, but how do we forge the synergy of, if you like, process and people? And there seems to be a lot of talk out there now, like we need to value people, but often people in those traditional stuck environments still don't understand people. And if they are all men, they may be different types of men, and that's great. But business is still, in that very corporate sense, it still can be very profit motivated and ignoring people. And although we've got lots and lots and lots of examples of good stuff happening in lots of organizations which are now, you know, Google, Facebook, Etna, I've been reading a lot of them that have had this much better energy. It's still not the majority, unfortunately. And I'm sure that's true in corporate Australia as well as corporate America. And I kind of think there's wonderful happening thing at the bottom of the volcano, but the top of the volcano has still got this control thing on. And I would like all the energy like you've developed in the Campfire project, Alan, which is fantastic, but I want that everywhere. And I don't want it to take 100 years to get to parity or to change. And I think this is a decade where we are more aware of being humans first. And how do we get that message out to everybody?
Yeah, it's also getting the message out so that people actually understand as well. As you said, you know, everybody's heard about emotional intelligence, and everyone will tell you and that yes, their workers are their greatest asset. But really, I think a lot of businesses, and I found that when I put a post up on LinkedIn last February and followed up with a second one in June and a video in a month later, I have over 100,000 interactions on it, of likes, comments, shares, and all the rest of it. And the comments that were there were showing that people were talking about it but still didn't understand it. Yeah. And, you know, I think we pay lip service to a lot of things because, you know, we want to fit in and everything else. But people talk about staff being resources. But when you look at leadership and management, management is about resources. Leadership is about people. So did we do ourselves a disservice by calling the people a resource, but then grouped them with all the other resources we have in the organisation? Wouldn't we have been better off to have shown them that leadership, working with the people, was far more important than the resources you have, and therefore going off in the right direction to start with? So just a question I was asking myself the other day, so probably a discussion for another time, but it is a case of realising that, yes, your people are valuable. How do we draw out and find out the benefits that they have, the strengths that they have, and how do we bring that together with everybody else to create something stronger again?
Well, I love listening to Brene Brown last week. Again, girl fanning, front row, just in awe of this woman, Brene Brown. So if anyone listening hasn't checked her out, she does research around being human and feeling. And one of the things that she said is, if you're not talking about feelings and gender in the workplace, then you won't be a leader in 5 years. So one of the things, as we're talking about man, woman, it's he, she, they, it's LBGT plus. So if we're talking full equality, then it's understanding, even on the forms you have, you just can't have Mr., Mrs., Ms., other. You can't just have male, female anymore, because all the time you're doing that, then you're excluding people. And one of the things, if we want to have success and we want to have that union, then it is including everyone, and the depth that, again, that goes to is extraordinary, that many people aren't aware of that as well. So most forms in most corporations, in most businesses, don't include everyone just from the start when you've got to put a name. So there's a name, and then people assume that someone is something. And yeah, so that like it can go so deeply if we really do want to include everyone.
I know where you're coming from, Heather, but one of the things I feel is that we've got to get into a safe space to have a conversation. And when I develop this map and I use it with LGBTQ, everybody is on there. And in fact, my gay communities, my trans community, they love it because they say, oh my God, we're in there together, because it's not about identity, it's about behavior. And it's about having a conversation which has no judgment. So that's the rule, so that you come with your experience, and the condition is that you always listen and you don't get angry and you don't try and control anything. And people always say to me, you know, so what happens if somebody gets angry? I say, well, if you allow it to carry on, that it ceases to be a magical conversation at that moment. So the issue is to say to somebody, well, these are the rules. Do you want to stay or would you like to go? And I've done this with bigger groups as well, in small tables of magical conversations. And one of the things I observe, whatever the subject is, and it might not be men and women, it might be customer service, it might be leadership, it might be anything, is the fact that at the table, they're allowed to contribute without anybody judging them. I mean, it takes a bit to get it going, but once they realize that, it's incredibly empowering just for the individual. And there's certain caveats you put in to make it okay. And the energy in the room just rises, whatever the subject. And so I've also done that about gender dynamics. I say it's not about identity, it's about how we perceive the world. Like some people are not as into conversation as others, for instance. So if you're having a conversation and people are time sensitive about how long they want to be there, you'd make them shorter. So, you know, I've had that occur where you make them 8-minute conversations as opposed to 30-minute conversations, but they're still allowed in that space to be free to observe. So the more we can unpack what it is to be human, and it's got a lot of layers, at the bottom layer is love.
Do you think that this really resonates with me in the fact that I believe it's all about then showing up authentically, isn't it? Because really, when we say, or to turn up with no judgment, that is the crux of the issue that we live with on a day-to-day basis. And that is a whole rabbit warren to actually allow people to fully be heard. And it's an interpersonal skill that I feel that we're really lacking today, because we have become so spoiled and so self-centered with all of what's available to us now. We actually have the opportunity to make so many choices and to have so many things that we want, that often we then think that the way we think is the way that it should be thought, or then we can judge somebody who doesn't think like that. And choice often causes an apathy where people just aren't interested, because there's so many choices. They go, oh, whatever. So one of the things I found when I start to try and have conversations in an authentic manner is that it's too hard, and people aren't really wanting to go that deep into it because it's a little bit controversial, and so then it's going to be a bit difficult, a little bit sticky. And so that is a difficult one, that it's creating the controversial conversation that actually does mention the elephant in the room, that hey, this is not okay behavior, or look, this is what's going on in our building, in our company, and although we're not going to say it, we all know it's there. So it's almost like having to really take the brush to some of the skeletons in the closet of the company that you're in, to really point out what's going on. And they're difficult conversations, but they're the conversations that need to happen to actually instigate real, true, authentic interchange about how it can be improved. So I believe there is that area around authenticity and around authentic communication with the lack of judgment, which is difficult, because people, I find, especially in now, we're creating a very conscious community, trying to create this global consciousness around being self-aware, being responsible for our own behaviors. And when all of that's said and done, the other narrative coming on top of that is that women need to remain positive at all times and don't be negative. So here we are saying we want to talk about mental health, we want to talk about the difficulty in the workplace, but the narrative over the top of all of that often is like, don't be so negative, or, you know, kind of come with a joy in your step or something. So we're battling those as well, the way to actually fully hear each other, because as people are talking, instead of people fully listening to where they're coming from and trying to really feel into, oh, this is how that really looks and feels for them. Okay, now I can really empathize with how difficult this situation is in this workplace, and that way of looking at it and feeling into it and seeing it, it probably would be of benefit in our team. People are going, how can I answer that shows my knowledge? And so they answer with their own take on the communication, rather than actually hearing the skills and the gifts that the other person's bringing to the table.
So I'm curious, because we've spoken about feelings then, and we've talked about being authentic, and then we can't bring anger in. I mean, anger is a natural feeling, and anger is a feeling that is made wrong, that is looked at by many as being negative. But anger is our boundaries, anger is clarity, anger is direction, anger is focus. So I think the statement that we can't have, I've sort of got hooked on that, because it's like, you know, you can't have anger. Well, that's blocking the neutral life force that is through you. So to sit there and say, but to help people understand that you're going to feel whatever you're going to feel, whereas like, and to help them to be able to language it and communicate it and sit with and observe and not project, that's a totally different thing. That you said, don't bring anger in. And I'm like, well, then we're not being authentic. Then we're not talking about feelings, because people will be angry. And then it's like, wow, I'm really angry right now. And it's like, okay, that's cool. So help me understand how you're saying we're going to be authentic, we're going to be real, but we're not having anger in the room.
Okay, let me explain then. There are different types of conversations. So what I think is, where Helen was alluding to, is there are still spaces for non-conflict resolution and for angry debates, and that's different. So the reason that I use magical conversations as a forum for creativity and safe expression is not necessarily to dig down into the anger. So there are different conversations that go into the mix. The advantage of the magical conversation is the topic is in the center, so it's not personally based. It's about sharing into a central subject. And therefore, I would see it when I work with my clients, I work with different types of conversations in order to lead up to these, or maybe mix them in. So people get used to situations where, in a way, they feel safe to talk about a subject which they can share or not share or listen. And that other conversations which are about very pernicious issues need to be tackled in a different way. So that's me explaining. It's not every conversation will be magical.
Yeah.
The magical one does increase creativity, and the reason I call it magical is that it's making the unbelievable believable. So I'll give you an example one, Heather, if that will help. I did some recently which was about creating our future, and the subject matter was what would you like your future ideally to be? And let's just put all that on the table and explore. And I did it with just women one time and then just men one time, just to separate it. I might do it with all baby boomers or all millennials or a mixed group, which I happen to be, you know, it doesn't matter. But what I was trying to do is to use our imagination and not be in the present or the past, just to see what our view would be. And what I found in those conversations is it really excite people about a possibility of a life that was better. So it wasn't necessarily addressing particular issues, that would be another side conversation. But if we got a future picture, we have something more to move towards. And that's one of the threads that I use with my clients to lift creativity and engagement. Does that make sense, Heather? So I'm not ignoring angry or passionate conversations that might go into debate and an argument, but to actually get people to feel okay in a circle of people, and then maybe they can come and bring their angry subjects to the same group as they build more synergy.
Yeah, I fully get the future and wanting it to be different. It was just saying you can't bring a feeling into a conversation.
Oh no,
I mean,
absolutely.
That was the statement.
No, you definitely in a magical conversation you definitely need feelings. What I meant was, and I often say to people, you can bring loads of passion, but don't bring your fists.
Yeah, but anger doesn't necessarily mean fists, because that's an old model of what anger means.
Okay, well, that's my expression of it. So I say to clients, you know, bring your passion, but maybe that's my perspective, that when I see the word anger, I see it as detrimental to the flow of a magical conversation.
Yeah. Whereas there's
passion and feeling definitely has to be.
Yeah, whereas anger, if you take out that anger is a negative thing and that anger is a bad thing, and you look at the new model of what anger is, then it can be very welcome into that creating the new. So yeah, just a difference of thought around the definition of anger.
When it comes down to any of the emotions that we have, there's no right or wrong emotion. It's the application of the emotion, the time that we present it. You know, I went through a lot when I was a kid, and I was ready to give up completely. And in that last moment, I just got angry that everybody had been pushing me around, and that changed my attitude. So I survived on anger. Now, to be angry with everybody that came up and ready to fight with everybody is not a good thing. But if somebody was attacking my children or grandchildren, for instance, to get angry would be appropriate. So when's the right time to use it? If we can bring an anger into a conversation, but I like to pre-frame things in the first place to find out why if I want to get something across the line, I need to know what the other person is looking for, so I can then find a common ground so we can get there. So I'll look at the emotions.
I think as well.
Sorry.
One of the, in relation to what we're discussing around the masculine feminine debate as well, is that some of the ways that feelings are spoken about in the gender is actually very damaging. And I think that is something that also really needs to be embraced, in that if I get angry, for example, it could be that I'm seen as hysterical, you know, because there's that kind of, they've put on that, whereas a guy's seen as aggressive. And so there's none of those are nice things to say to each other, but they are condescending just in their very form. And I was listening to this really fabulous documentary where it was a documentary how there were men who'd actually transgendered over to women, and they were now living female lives, and women who had actually gone over to live male lives. And they were talking about the differences of how they were treated in their new bodies and in their new lifestyles. And there was this lady who transformed over to be a guy, and he was saying whenever he walked down the street before, he felt that he had to smile. And he said he couldn't believe how he could just grump around his world as a man, and it was totally okay. But as a woman, he would have people shout at him, "Oh, smile, babe," or, you know, "Put a smile on your face," or "Why so grumpy?" And that he could actually have a row with a man in a bar, and everybody, really nobody batted an eyelid. But if he was to have a row with that man as in his female form, it would have been like, what is her problem? She's nuts, you know? And it was so interesting to listen to these people who had actually played both roles in their lives as a solid entity, not pretending they were both those genders. And so that is an important conversation as well, that when we do bring these feelings forward in our community and in our workplaces, that they are respected. That our emotions and our feelings are respected as something that's coming from within, because we are passionate about a subject, or we are saddened by a subject, or we are feeling frustrated, or whatever it is, that our opinions and our feelings, however they do come across, of course, they need to be done. All feelings need to be your own responsibility to be able to kind of hold that energy of the feeling within you to try and put it forward in a way that's respectful to everybody in the room. And of course, that's what we're really saying, is that we just need to behave well, depending on whatever the feeling is. You know? Yeah,
I love what you said, Helen, and it is very interesting in the programs I've done with mixed groups, and this was in Malaysia and UK and in US. The actual discussion of those differences in a magical conversation are absolutely fabulous. Because people start saying, "Oh, God, is that really true?" And "Oh no," and everything that people say is true to them. And it's exploring that in a safe environment, rather than behind hidden doors or in that derogatory way. And I've just seen enlightenment, little light bulbs going on all across the room. But just that space doesn't happen enough times to get us across the basic stuff that is causing us issues still, and that's my passion. Is it's only the first step in a lot of layers of actually letting go of all of it and saying, "Oh, this is great, you know, I can just be who I am." I can be a masculine-minded female, I can be a feminine-minded male, I can be any sexual orientation, I can be any race, any culture. I've worked with a mixed Muslim group in Malaysia, and they loved it. And I just think it's almost, as somebody mentioned earlier, the elephant in the room, actually exploring it for real. And giving that condition is that whatever people say, it's their view, so let's respect it. It might not be
that's the thing,
your
isn't
view.
it? You know, if we drop all the stuff and we drop all of the labeling, and we actually just show up with ourselves, whether our self means that I'm a masculine feminine, or whether I'm a feminine feminine, or whether I'm a feminine masculine, whatever any of that is, if we're actually just showing up into the room in our purity, knowing that we're bringing our best energy, that we're bringing a self-responsibility for how we're going to behave, but that we are allowed to feel however we feel, that we're going to bring our own gifts to the table by really sharing truly what we feel about what's being said. Because only by actually truly speaking our truth on what's being said in any conversation can we actually start to peel away the layers, and we take the lid off those human interactions. So if we're afraid that we're going to say the wrong thing, or we're guarding who we are, or we're there just to represent the female or to represent the male, we're never really going to unpeel what's really going on. Because once we show up as people, then the gifts that we bring as that human can create a team. And that team then is not, oh, we've got to have 60% guys and we've got to have 40% women. Let's just pick people. It means that we're coming as humans, and then through the ability to show up without being shamed, or without feeling that we're not good enough, or without all of the kind of personal fears that we bring, then that's when we can be seen for the enormity of what we have to offer, which then of course will get us to be chosen for more and more things that we would be of value for. And I think personally, my belief is that is how we change these systems, is by showing up with our gifts and not either in pants or a skirt. Yeah.
Well, that's right, because those, Pauline took me through and we did a video on the masculine feminine energy, and it just showed how that when you look at the combinations, men can look more feminine than the women can look, depending on the position they're in. So taking that line out between men and women and realizing there's more varieties, all the crossovers, it starts to show that there is a larger range. And so we can't be so cut and dried in our attitudes to things. We can then start to open up and go, right, there are other alternatives. Let's look at what they are. If you come to a conversation going, I want to find out more here, I want to know how other people think and everything else. Yes, you can have all the emotions, but you're not bringing those to the table and dumping them on people. You bring those, so you have those passionate conversations because you're keen about the thing. You really want to do some great things, but you can then treat people with respect in the process. I can still be angry with somebody, but still treat them with respect. I can be angry not so much at them, but what they've actually done. And so I can still treat them with respect, and we can then start to look at what the problem was and deal with that.
Yes.
And I think taking away from that, cut and dry, as we're saying, teams are made up of all the differences. So everybody brings something to the table. And if we open our eyes and allow that other people to show us what their gifts, we're the winners from it. It's not just giving them a chance to be, put it out on the table and go, hey, look at me. I'm going, no, show me. And if they show me, then I'm ready to take that on. Yeah.
And I mean, as you know, Alan, and I'd love the two of you to explore the map that I've designed and see what you think. But like a lot of your work, Alan, I was watching some of your clips about, eyes wide apart or near together, or, what features do you evaluate from somebody? That's part of my study, is that there's a structural physicality about just how we walk and stand, where we can just simply see a circle, a 360-degree range of different types of men and women, and it helps us like, Alan's stuff, is to understand how we can tune into them. It's like understanding auditory, visual, kinesthetic clues. And that's my intention, is not to label anybody, but to allow us to tune in order to be the humans first that we are. And I think it's different to people knowing the value of respect or trust or love or openness or willingness to listen. That goes without, that is the route to understanding each other. But I just feel there's been so much sometimes control about gender. I'm talking about the dynamics that allow us to see behavior and to not become neutral about gender, but to know that it's who I am, is it's part of who I am. I'm British, I'm 70, I'm a baby boomer, I'm this kind, I'm that kind, this is my natural gift. All those things that we learn, and then we can share. But if we can listen to other people, that makes all the difference. And a lot of people, I think, don't necessarily listen very well yet. Otherwise, we'd have a better world.
Well, that's right. So that's where with the profiling as well, when you're putting people into boxes, you're categorizing and making judgments of them. But when you think that your facial features are made up from the way you like to think and process, whatever we feel inside, we express outwardly. So we create the ridges and crevices on our face, positioning of our eyes and everything else. And when you look at that, there is no two people on the planet who are the same.
Yeah.
There's, with
well, we've all got a different fingerprint, haven't we?
That's right. And we also, the skulls, there's no two skulls that are exactly the same shape, because the skull shape is taken from the synaptic connections of your brain as your brain grows. And depending on how you think, depends on the shape of your skull. And so with that, there is no two people on the planet who are the same. And therefore, I can't put people into boxes. Every time I work with them, I just naturally treating them as an individual. And the only way to do that, you have to do it with respect. Yeah. And I look for what's the gift that stands out the most in that person, because I know that's different to every other person on the planet. They're the combination of gifts. And so everybody's got a place. And that's why I've always find it really easy to step back from the categorizing and look at people and go, why is everybody going to put them in a box?
I think
that's right. I need to do that so that I know how to address them. Well, no, treat them as an individual and address them that way.
In the era as well, where there's more single mums than ever before, I think our roles are becoming closer and closer together as well, because there's single dads who then play the mother role when the children are with them, and then single mums are playing the masculine role too. So we're actually in an environment where we are really we're well placed to have empathy for the other, because we are playing both of these roles, and we can recognize within each other the gifts that these bring. So we, more than ever, almost universally, through the choices that we're making globally, we're becoming more masculine, more feminine, equally between us, rather than becoming, more feminine and a little bit masculine. Or we are actually starting to fulfill both roles. So we're the nurturer, and then we're the provider, or at work we're this, or at home we're that, and we're across everything now. We're doing a bit of everything. We don't have the defined role that we used to. So we are well placed now to be able to have understanding and love and appreciation of what we all go through as genders, and the energy of whatever it is that we're pulling in to deal with that in our life. And it saddens me that we're not taking advantage of that. We're actually bringing an anger towards the other because we're having to play that role, instead of kind of, recognizing what that's bringing and how we can actually connect into other human beings because of that. That everything we do that we didn't plan on doing, of course, as we know, brings us that gift that we didn't know before, and the growth, etc., etc. And it would be lovely if we could bring that into our immediate environment in our society too, instead of be angry at the other person,
Mm.
bring the understanding.
Yeah, so that's why I've been scratching my head lately, because we're better suited now than ever before to be able to have those conversations. If we go back with the facial features, for instance, the traits, there was a full set that were female, there was a large set that were male, and you wouldn't see one in the other. But as we've gone along, the more of the traits, now you'll see so many of the female traits in the males and so many of the male traits in the females. So we've got to that point where we're coming more alike, but we're being, with our beliefs and what we're doing at the moment, we're becoming more separated than what I've seen over the last decade or so. So now is really the time to go, hey, we are similar. Look at the masculine, feminine matrix, as you've said there, Pauline, so people realise, hey, we all fit into this and we're all mixed together. So
I would like to say something with that. We are all similar as human beings, but we are fantastically, beautifully different as unique individuals.
That's right.
So I'm a bit confused, to be honest. I think that if we get angry with somebody, that's different to whether we're a certain type of man or woman. That maybe just we're getting angry. We've got trauma, we got headaches, we got problems, we got issues. But getting to know our value as different human beings, our traits, maybe our characteristics, our natural gifts, also who we are as a human being that was born a man or a woman, and all sorts of variations that are in that whole mix. I think it's beautiful. I want people to understand it more, the traits that come into it, so that it doesn't become this sticky subject. It's actually, for me, I talk a lot about the value of differences. So though we're similar, we're human beings, the value of differences that, it's all the beautiful things that we have that make up our fantastic personality.
Yeah, well, when we look at the traits, I said there were male traits and there were female traits. And if we look at just the female traits, the combination possibilities were a certain size. But when you cross them over and combinations of it, the possibilities now go up even higher again. So the range of variety is so much greater. It really makes all of us, as you said, uniquely different to each other. But because of that crossing over and everything else, I believe we're at a time where we should be able to understand each other more effectively than we had before.
I would agree with that. I think that is what I'm surprised that some human beings are not attempting to do. That we have so much. I think you mentioned it, both of you, Helen, and we've got so much information at our fingertips to understand ourselves, that understanding other people should be natural. So what are the blocks that stop us wanting to understand people is a separate issue, and that could be mother and daughter, it could be girlfriends, it could be, whatever, politicians. I mean, who knows? With all the reasons that we don't understand somebody. But I think for me, it's there are different operating systems with the biology and then the energy of masculine, feminine, and just being able to identify it, like your auditory, visual, and kinesthetic aspect. What are the preferences, so we can flow into unity. So unity doesn't mean we're all the same. That's my view. And community is about lots of parts coming together. That's, for me, is what synergy is about. It's valuing all the parts. What do you think, Heather? I didn't want to take the most time here, but I just feel really passionate about the value of differences. Like, we're four of us, we're all beautifully different.
Yeah, I'm happy for the conversation to flow where it goes. So, and I love the diversity, and I have a belief that the extraordinary differences, that we have everything that we need because of that differences, and my passion is not your passion, and my belief is not your belief, and then some of them are, because that's what makes up the world. That means that there's someone who will look after the animals, and there's someone else who will look after the air, even though I have to play my role, and someone else will look after the earth. And our passion here is people. So I feel in a way relaxed, because I know someone else is doing that other stuff because of those differences. And one of the things that you said, Alan, was that we have more separation and I don't remember because then I move forward, but more separation. And that's not my experience. My experience is more and more union of man and woman coming together, of different genders coming together, of people coming together and understanding. And I have that skewed world because that's what I live in. And then the more people I meet, the more that is true. And for me, my journey was, my masculine, my feminine, my bits were all outside of me. And then it is the union of being the fullness of all of that, depending on the moment when I'm the single mum that I need to be, or whether I'm the boss and the leader, or whether I'm a client, or wherever I am, that just is the union. So I see, and I do a lot of awakening men's work and awakening women's work, where the awakening of the humans are actually coming together, regardless of race, color, gender, sexuality, any of those things. So I was interested in, like, you're seeing a greater separation, and I was like, cool, because I'm not seeing that. So again, just that diversity of who is in your field, perhaps, and who is in mine. Because I'm like, is that real? Do you really mean that? Maybe
it does come down to that. It depends on the fields that we run in. One of the things that we know in business, in 2016, we had about 66% of people from the Gallup research that were disengaged. It's now 87%. So we've got people a lot angrier. One of the things that they tried to bring us together was to bring in quotas. So we have so many of this or so many of that, in so many women, so many different genders, etc. And now you've got the people who are being displaced because they've been displaced just on numbers or having quotas. The resentment that's there as well.
Yeah.
So when I'm out in public, I'm watching people, because I'm profiling all the time. I'm watching their behaviours to each other. I'm looking at their expressions, and I'm noticing there's a lot more of that under the surface. Yes, everyone, the people you hear are coming forward and saying, hey, we need to make these changes. Yep, let's do this. But underneath the surface, some of those, I've even profiled men who have been up in front of women's groups sprouting about being feminist and everything else. And I've watched them and I've known everything they've said was not true. Because of what's under the surface. The problem with being a profiler.
Yeah.
I see all this stuff. But that was the reason where it came from. Because we know that if people are disengaged at work, we know that they're going to be disengaged at, in home, they're going to be fighting with their spouse. The kids are therefore going to cop it as well. We've got more bullying at school than we've had before. So there's all these issues that are coming up. And each time you talk to powers to be, groups who have got some power to actually make some changes, they go, oh no, we'll continue doing what we've always done because we'll sooner or later get a new result. And we know what Henry Ford and Einstein said about those. And so that's where it comes from. It's what's underneath the surface. Yes, we've got a lot more talk. If we listen to even the climate change talks at the moment, the people who are speaking, sit back and then watch them and then see how they're talking to somebody else, and they completely switch once they're away from that audience. And so we might have a lot more people talking in a positive way when they're being observed. But as I say, character is who you are when people can't see you, when you're in the dark.
Yeah.
And that's what I notice, because I'm able to see that from the profiling work that I do. But the whole thing is that we shouldn't stop doing what we're doing, because the people who've been coming to the Campfire project, for instance, are the ones that you deal with. They want to see a change, and they're having those conversations. So we just have to more focus on them and hope and find better ways of doing the integration and bringing people together than just using quotas, because that does put off a lot of people and that causes them to fester and get upset underneath. And that's why the reasons why so many people are disengaged, and it's the ones who are actively disengaged that then cause the ones who are engaged to become disengaged. And that's why these problems have been exacerbated.
Yeah. Do you think it's a power thing? Because I think a lot of the disparities are from ego and power. It's that fear that our environment has never had more mental health issues, and with that comes an insecurity, and people aren't confident and they don't feel good, and their self-talk is really critical and against them, and so they're entering these situations ready to defend themselves, because they already believe that whatever's going to be said is a personal attack, because they already really think that about themselves, and they're afraid that somebody's going to see that. And so a lot of this comes from our global insecurity, and then the inflated ego to then hide that. And then what that causes is then a complete inauthenticity, which is a power struggle then. You know, I'm going to just like come over the top of you, because if I give in, you'll see my weakness and I'll have no value. And there's so much of that, where this is where we need, no matter who's leading, we need compassionate leadership. And the compassionate leadership is the thing that will change the world, where we actually welcome people's difficulties, people's struggles to the table, so that they can actually be encouraged or addressed or embraced. And then by opening up these conversations on the table of true depth of difficulty, of actually appearing in this space. How afraid of you of being here today? You know, this is nerve-wracking, isn't it? This is actually quite difficult. This is rough. This is, you know, and really owning the energy that sharing your feelings brings. Then that's when we can truly honor what's going to be said, and people start to see the similarities between all of us, rather than somebody just impressing over the top of somebody else, which causes more and more ego, more and more true difficulty, and that squirreling away of how inadequate you feel. And I see that play out all the time. And I think that's something that really needs to be resolved if we truly do want to have conversations that make change, that we acknowledge how difficult it is for people to come forward.
And it's also about the conversation we're having with ourselves. Changing our words can change our words can change our world. And that's something I believe in. And I think we're all enlightened. We've all been along that path, but many people still haven't. And
I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm enlightened. I'm on the journey.
Well, it's always happening. I think once you're on the path, it's always happening. It never stops, does it?
Playing with words.
Yeah.
So that importance of creating the safety where people can be real about what they feel. And one of my stories, Spruce, is speaking truth with love and compassion. And it's the foundation of communication that businesses are now taking on, that this is how we speak, with love and compassion. That doesn't mean not being angry, sad or scared. I met one of my team's mums in the streets, and I was like, hey, I love having her here. She's gorgeous. I love her, blah, 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 blah. And then I just looked at her and was like, what's wrong? She's like, oh, nothing. And I was like, she loves being here, doesn't she? And she's like, yeah, she loves it. And I'm like, oh, like my whole being was just sinking. I'm like, what am I missing? What am I missing? And so when this beautiful young woman who'd been with me for a couple of years came in, I was like, hey, I saw your mum in the street. What'd you say? I'm like, nothing. That was the whole point. She didn't say anything. And I really need to know. I know you love being here. I love you being here. I really need to know what's going on. And I looked at her and the tears started to well. And I was like, please share with me. I need to know. And she said, I feel like a failure. I feel like I let you down all the time, and you are such a great person, and you have given me so many chances, and I'm so deeply grateful. And I just feel like I let you down all the time. And I just stood there gobsmacked. And my heart was just ripping out of my chest. And I was like, thank you. And I said, what do you do? Because she worked Friday nights. I said, you go home at Friday night and you tell your family all the things that you've done wrong, that you've fucked up, and you cry for the night, don't you? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, whoa, like, no, like, I'm really sorry that I have allowed that I have co-created this, because I have so much joy. And how about we look at every time, tell me the things that you've learned, whether it's the $15,000 sterilizer that is now stuffed or whatever it is. How about you go home, and how about we celebrate every time you learn something? Because for me, it is joyous to have you in this place. So to create that safety and to create that this young woman is a leader. I mean, I knew it when she was in high school. She worked with me through uni. She now works in the clinic that I used to own. And she's an extraordinarily powerful young leader that is on a journey. She sort of recognises maybe she is somewhere along the line. But having that open conversation, she was able to shift that. She no longer hangs on to anything. It is extraordinary. Something happens, and again, it's like, oh wow, cool. What did I learn? And whereas that big stack of baggage that she was holding on to, that's gone. And like, there's an unburdening of her soul by creating that safety of speaking with love and compassion about what's real. So whether it's the anger, the sadness, the fear, or the joy, the four primary emotions, four primary feelings, or the mixture, that hysteria you were talking about, which is a mixture of anger and fear that creates hysteria. And that's quite different to a man's anger. The woman often joins the fear, and that is hysteria. And then they're like, whoa, what is going on? Because it's a different energy. Then when we create that safety, like, transformation happens instantly. It's not like it takes weeks and years worth of stuff going on. It literally transforms things immediately. And I love creating that space in workplaces and in community with family and friends. It's my passion.
Yeah, well, that transformation is what we call those light bulb moments, and we use that term a lot. So often, obviously, they happen a lot. But when we look at something, it's like you mentioned power, Helen. You mentioned power and ego. Well, if we look at those, we're looking at a symptom. We go back further and we go, okay, what's causing those? And at the root of a lot of things, most people are feeling insecure. So, as you've said, Helen, by helping that person to feel secure and everything else, we've just done a panel discussion before this one, which was on imposter syndrome and how that affects people. And I put my hand up straight away and talked about how I've just gone through that recently myself with I'm classed as the best at what I do worldwide. But at the same time, when I'm speaking, I was always wondering, am I good enough for the audience? And so we all have that. And that will hold us back, that self-doubt. So having people that we trust who can talk to us and explain things to us, what they're seeing and everything else, and taking that on board and going, okay, well, I need to revalue what I'm doing. How much pressure am I putting on myself? Because when we take the pressure off ourselves and we're happier, we also take the expectations and pressure off other people. And then we can have better conversations with them again.
You just showed the absolute key to compassionate leadership, Helen. You actually spoke into your own insecurity, and that's the best thing we can ever do in a room where we want people to open, is to show that we've been there, that we feel it, that we understand it, that we have weaknesses or difficulties, or that we can relate, and that we're relatable as people, and that we can still be respected in that space. Yeah,
well, if I gave a talk and didn't use any of that, it'd be a short talk. But if I use all of those things that happened and the things around me, I can talk for weeks.
Oh, yes.
But then again, as they say, if you want to grow, you grow from the mistakes you make. You don't grow from the things that you're doing right. So as they say, fail often, but fail fast and move on from it. Learn from the lesson, but let the experience go.
I love that. I think that's so important that, life is always vulnerable and glorious at the same time. It's just this duality, I think, is so exciting. I mean, everything is so uncertain at the moment in the world, but it's actually still certain that we're progressing and that we're moving in a certain direction. And I think that's the magic of what we bring together.
And as Heather was explaining about the young woman, she's looking at it from the negative side, and talking to her, you've brought out and you've looked at the positive side. The situations were still the same. It was just the way in which the girl was looking at things. Seeing it one way, but then realising if you look at it the other way, life's completely changed. And therefore, instant transformation, as you said, Heather.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was just looking at the time there. I think we've been getting close to the mark. As I say, every time I have these conversations, I've got to clock up there. I've got to keep looking at it because I just get lost in the conversations we're having. As you coined it beautifully, Pauline, with magical conversations. I think
My
that's
passion.
we're always having every time that we get together on the panel discussions with everybody who's been here. So, by the way, we talked before about Pauline did a one-on-one with me about the masculine and feminine energies. That's in the, there's a PDF file for the one-on-one chats, and they are in alphabetical order by name, so you can find somebody very quickly. There's another one there with the panel discussions, and they're in the order that we've got them, and this will be the 48th panel discussion that we've had. So you go in there, you can find the links to the videos very quickly. So I recommend you have a quick look for Pauline's.
Yeah, you're fantastic, Helen. The library of information you're putting together is stunning.
Well, I've got to put it together because it's not really in my head. But ladies, thank you very much for being here. I've really appreciated you coming along and sharing your wisdom, and I'm sure everybody else got a lot out of it as well. And I'll put it out to everybody who's listening to this. Again, you resonate with anybody who's been on the panels, get in touch with them, take it offline. The Campfire Project is not a tribe. It's not my tribe. It's our community. This is a place where you can come and connect with people, learn from them, find people who might be able to help you, get together and talk. Same thing with the people who have come on with the one-on-ones. You see synergy together, get together and create projects together. Because to get this to grow faster, the more we can take it out to the world, the more that Campfire will do what it was supposed to have done. Later on, it'll just be a little part on the side, and everything else that's grown from it will be the things we're all focusing on, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. So again, thank you very much for being here. And
thank you.
You're welcome. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
And
I'll share with you my book. If any of you want to have a download copy, I'll send it to you personally. It is on Amazon as a Kindle, but I'm very happy to send you my PDF if you'd like it.
fantastic. Thank you very much.
So I think one of the things is that people can send us, because this is a lot of it's on Facebook, they can send us a message even if we're not friends. I know it goes to that other file.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have to wait to be friends on Facebook. Just send the message anyway.
Because you don't have to, people might say, oh, I don't want to put a comment up. Well, you don't have to put a comment up. As you say, go to the messenger and put it in there. You don't have to be a connection, but you will get possibly into the secondary folder. But you usually get notified about those at some point through your timeline anyway. So, and if somebody doesn't, then send them another one. That'll jog the system to send another reminder. Or,
Well, I'm sure and everybody can find us if they want to.
That's it. If it's really that difficult, send me a message and I'll send it on.
Yeah.
To say, oh, I want to connect with so-and-so, and I'll put you together as a group conversation. So, and you can take it on your own.
Yeah.
I separate myself.
It's been an awesome conversation, a magical conversation, and it's my pleasure to meet Heather and Helen. Thank you. And Helen, you're always a star.
Oh, thank you.
Beard or no beard?
Incognito, I was actually wearing a blue shirt the other day, and someone said, yeah, I look a little bit like Papa Smurf.
Like who?
Papa Smurf, one of the little cartoon characters.
I don't know what that is.
Anyway, thanks again for being here, and to everybody who's been listening in, thank you as well, and we'll see you on the next Campfire event. Bye for now.